After all of the problems with America, inflation, debts, etc., several people assembled to discuss these problems. This assembly was called the convention. Now, one time, a man named Edmund Rudolph came up with an idea to fix the government. This idea called for a strong national government. Now, some people say that James Madison was really the father of the idea, but whatever it was made. Now, this plan for government called for 3 branches: the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. Now, the legislative branch had 2 houses, the upper house and the lower house. People in the lower house were elected by citizens, whereas people in the upper house were elected by people in the lower house. And the number of representatives each state had was proportional to the population. Now, for the executive branch, these people had a limit on power, considering that they didn't want this to end up like the same situation they had with Great Britain. They could also veto laws and make up their own. Now, people in the legislative branch could also veto laws, and the people in the judicial branch could veto laws too. And people in the judicial branch served for their entire lives, while the rest of the branches only served terms. Of course, there were some oppositions to the Virginia plan, which led William Paterson proposing another plan, the New Jersey plan. Now, this plan still called for a strong national government, but a less powerful government than the Virginia plan. It also still had the same 3 branches of government, but they were different. For instance, in the legislative branch, every state had 1 vote regardless of the population. And the people in the legislative branch could impose taxes on the people. People in the judicial branch were elected by the people in the executive branch, and the people in the executive branch were appointed by Congress. So it was hard to decide what plan to adopt, so they came to a compromise, commonly known as the Great Compromise. This plan adopted parts from each side. The legislature was 2 housed, the lower house, a House of Representatives, and the upper house was the Senate. And the number of representatives each and votes each state had was proportional to the population. So a state like Virginia would have more votes than a state like Rhode Island.
I was going to talk. Now the problems of counting enslaved persons in the total population was still being resolved. The 2 sides, the North and the South, were fighting for their personal proposals to be listened to. The North felt that the enslaved people should not be counted in the state population. The North had already banned the slave trade, so it would give an overall advantage to the southern states who could count.
Had more slaves than them.
Had more slaves than they could count. And this meant that the South had more seats than Congress, so therefore more representatives. However, it also meant that the South had to pay more taxes than the North, which made the South very unhappy. But now, since there were 2 sides of the argument, they had to come up with another compromise known as the 3/5 compromise. The compromise, what?
Be louder.
This compromise suggested that every 5 enslaved people counted as 3 be actual citizens in the total population.